I still remember the exact shade of light in the kitchen that morning, the pale gold spilling in through the window, making the dust in the air shimmer like confetti. You'd think it would have been a beautiful moment, a celebration. My acceptance letter from Northwestern lay folded neatly on the table, its embossed seal catching the light like a promise. I was already imagining my future in the city, crisp autumns, lecture halls, my name on a dorm door, my future unfolding in chapters I hadn't dared believe in. I had earned it. I had worked through sleepless nights, skipped parties, lived in the library. It was mine. So when Mom walked in and sat across from me, eyes flicking to everything but my face, I knew something was wrong. Not in the dramatic thunderclap kind of way. It was quieter than that. Heavy. The kind of wrong that rearranges everything inside you without raising its voice. Her fingers wrapped too tightly around her mug. It was chipped at the rim, a coffee stain curling along the edge like an old bruise. She cleared her throat once. Twice. Then she dropped it like a stone. We had to use the money. At first, it didn't register. I thought she meant something small, a bit of savings, a minor dip into an emergency fund. But then she said it, your college fund, and I felt the ground shift. I asked her which money, like maybe there had been a mistake, like maybe she'd misused the word your. But there was no mistake, just a quiet, pitiful explanation. Emily needed the money. Emily was struggling. Her condo was falling apart. She'd made some poor choices. It was dangerous, Mom said, as if a leaking bathroom sink carried the same weight as a daughter's entire future. She was in a really dark place. We thought if we could just help her stabilize. It was always like that. Every bad decision Emily made was a crisis that required everyone else to throw themselves into the fire to keep her from burning. Her second divorce? My parents took her in. Her failed bakery attempt? Dad co-signed the loan. And now her condo? It had eaten my future whole. I sat there, not breathing. The edges of the world started to dull, as if someone had turned the volume down on life. My ears rang with silence. I looked up at my mother, but she couldn't look back. She just stared into her coffee like she wanted to disappear inside it. You didn't even tell me, I whispered. Dad came in from the hallway then, leaned against the doorframe like he was part of the furniture. He didn't look ashamed, just tired. He shrugged as if it had been the only logical option. You're smart, Rachel. You'll figure something out. That sentence, that one broke something, because it wasn't just about the money. It was about who mattered. It was about where love ended and expectation began. Emily needed, so they gave. I earned, so they took. I didn't cry that day. I think that shocked them more than anything. I just got up, folded my letter back into its envelope, and went to my room. That envelope stayed in my drawer for months. I couldn't bear to throw it away. It felt like a headstone. That night, lying on my bed with my ceiling fan groaning above me, I made a decision I wouldn't fully understand for years. I would never again rely on people who saw me as second place. I would build something quietly, precisely, and one day I'd be the one holding the power. They thought they'd taken my future. They didn't know they'd built my fire. Northwestern became the dream I left folded in a drawer. I unpacked it only in my lowest moments, when I was scraping burnt rice from a pot in a shared kitchen, or working a graveyard shift tutoring kids whose biggest problem was deciding between Columbia or Yale. Instead of that ivy-covered campus, I ended up in a crumbling dorm room at a state college, sleeping 5 hours a night and running on caffeine, pride, and spite. I clocked in at the campus bookstore at dawn, ran to my economics lecture, tutored calculus by afternoon, and waited tables until 2 a.m. some nights. I'd crawl into bed with my uniform still on and ramen broth crusted on my sleeves. My roommates called me a machine, but they didn't understand. I wasn't driven by ambition. I was fueled by betrayal. Every dollar I earned felt like a stitch, sewing shut a wound they'd left open. Rent came first, then textbooks, then the smallest possible luxuries, second-hand shoes that didn't hurt my feet, a decent calculator. Everything else went into a savings account I nicknamed Payback. I never touched it, no matter how bad things got. That money had a purpose, a future. And while Emily posted Instagram photos from her healing journey and showed off her granite countertops, I was studying how capital gains taxes worked. I spent weekends shadowing property managers and reading lease agreements the way other girls read romance novels. I watched YouTube videos on housing markets during my lunch breaks and scribbled notes about zoning laws between customer orders. By the time I graduated, I could quote mortgage amortization schedules in my sleep. I didn't attend my graduation ceremony. I was already 2 weeks into a job with a man named Victor Sloan, a legend in real estate and a nightmare to work for. He believed in trial by fire and zero praise. He once made me rewrite a property proposal 12 times before approving it. But under that razor-sharp cruelty was a method. He taught me how to see numbers not as limits, but as weapons. Within 2 years, I started making quiet moves, partnering with smaller investors, flipping low-risk properties, learning to negotiate like I had nothing to lose. Because honestly, I didn't. I had already lost the thing that mattered most, my family's trust, or rather, my trust in them. At 26, I bought a one-bedroom unit in a rough neighborhood, sight unseen. Everyone told me it was a bad buy. I gutted it, painted it myself, and flipped it for triple. That was the first time I saw my payback account actually grow, not from labor but leverage. By 27, I had 5 units. By 28, I had a limited liability company in my name and contracts in 3 zip codes. People started calling me sharp, disciplined. No one saw the origin of it all, sitting in that kitchen with my mother, learning that love came with conditions and I wasn't the chosen one. And then came the opportunity. A whisper from a former contact. The duplex on Maple Street, the one my parents still lived in, was about to hit the market. The owner was old, tired, and ready to let it go cheap. It was nothing to look at. Cracked vinyl siding, a porch that dipped in the middle like a sad sigh, rust-stained gutters, but I knew that building better than most. I'd helped paint its fence when I was 12. I'd sat on those steps after school, waiting for Dad to come home. That sagging duplex, it was theirs. And I was going to own it, every cracked brick, every worn floorboard, every forgotten corner of it. Not for revenge, for reckoning. I didn't knock on their door. I didn't scream or cry or make some grand announcement about poetic justice. That kind of drama wasn't mine. I had spent too many years learning that real power isn't loud. It's written in contracts, signed in ink, and enforced with deadlines. I had their building appraised 3 times before making an offer. Not because I didn't know what it was worth, but because I wanted the paper trail to be airtight. I hired a property attorney with a reputation for being meticulous to the point of obsession. Every code, every clause, every form, triple-checked. No mistakes, no loopholes. I wasn't just buying property. I was building a wall no one could climb over or crawl under. The moment the deed transferred into my name, I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just sat in my office and stared at the ownership papers, tracing my name on the dotted line like it was a signature of rebirth. It was done. But I didn't call them. I didn't gloat. I waited, let it sit, let it breathe. Then a month later, the letters went out. Standard format. Neutral tone. Notice of renovation and termination of tenancy under Ordinance Code 7.14. Legal language, precise timelines. 60 days to vacate. Assistance options listed. A hotline for questions, staffed by my assistant, not me. Everyone got one. Apartment 1A through 3C, including my parents. They didn't know, of course. Not at first. To them, it was just another faceless change in ownership. Some investor playing Monopoly with their lives. They'd lived in that building for 22 years. My old bedroom still had the peeling glow-in-the-dark stars I stuck on the ceiling when I was 10. They thought longevity would protect them. That history meant immunity. It didn't. My phone rang the day they got the letter. I knew it was coming. Rachel? My mom's voice cracked through the line. We just got this notice. There has to be some mistake. We've lived here for 2 decades. We pay on time. This can't be right. There's no mistake, I said calmly. I had practiced this tone in my head for years, steady, emotionless, unshakable. You have 2 months to vacate. There was a pause. A long, heavy silence where I could almost hear her realization crawling in. Who bought the building? She asked, voice small now, unsure. I let the pause stretch. Let the weight of the question sit in the space between us. Then I answered. Me. Click. I didn't wait for her to reply. There was nothing left to say. It wasn't about vengeance. Not really. It wasn't about punishing them, or humiliating them, or reducing them to rubble. It was about clarity. It was about holding up a mirror and showing them what choice looked like when it came back around. They had chosen Emily. They had chosen short-term rescue over long-term promise. They didn't just doubt my ability to make it, they bet against it. I just happened to win. So no, I didn't send them packing with glee. I sent them packing with paperwork. Because in the end, I wasn't their angry daughter anymore. I was their landlord. The call from Emily came at 8:42 a.m. sharp, like her indignation couldn't wait another minute. No greeting, no hesitation, just heat. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? Her voice had that brittle edge she always summoned when trying to sound righteous, the kind of pitch that was more performance than pain. For a moment, I let the silence stretch, pressing my fingers to my temple, willing away the tight coil of tension building behind my eyes. Then I answered, not with rage, not with tears, but with the same cool steel I had learned to wrap around my heart years ago. You mean, I said, how could I legally renovate a building I own? The same way they legally gutted my college fund without telling me. She didn't respond, not immediately, and in that pause I could feel the air shift, the shape of the conversation curling into something heavier than either of us wanted to acknowledge. You got new countertops, Emily, I said, my voice flat. I got 4 years of debt and trauma, but yeah, let's talk about who's being unfair. Still, she didn't speak. I could hear the hum of traffic in the background on her end. She was probably pacing in her car, parked somewhere she thought would give her the moral upper hand, but her silence told me everything. She wasn't calling because she believed she'd been wronged. She was calling because the mirror had finally turned on her, and she didn't like what she saw. She hung up. No goodbye. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. My father's precise penmanship curled across the page like it was still 1999 and I was winning a spelling bee. But this wasn't a note of pride or contrition. It was a plea, muted, hollow, and miles from any real apology. We're getting older, Rachel. We need stability. We thought things would work themselves out. Please don't do this. Not I'm sorry, not we were wrong, just please don't. They wanted me to absorb the consequences of their choices, again, to be the one who compromised, the strong one, the one who always figured it out. But I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't sitting at the kitchen table with a crumpled acceptance letter and a smile dissolving under the weight of betrayal. I was a business owner. I was a woman who had survived being discarded by the very people who promised to protect her. I had already paid the price for their decisions. I wasn't paying the interest to. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't call. I didn't write. Because the truth had finally crystallized into something I could hold without shaking. They had never really seen me. Not as someone with needs or limits or even boundaries, just as the one who would endure, the one who would understand. But understanding had its limit, and I had reached it. This wasn't vengeance. This was the end of permission. When I took possession of the building, it wasn't just keys I was handed, it was control. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to consider me. I wasn't holding my breath, hoping to be chosen. I was choosing myself, and the space I was about to shape reflected that with every nail, every coat of paint, every line item in my renovation budget. I didn't cut corners. The floors were redone. No more peeling laminate or water-warped baseboards. I hired a small team of contractors I trusted, most of them local. The lighting was replaced, warm, clean, intentional. Halls that once smelled of mildew now carried the faint scent of fresh pine and new beginnings. I replaced the rusted mailboxes, retiled the laundry room, and power washed the grime off the brick facade until it almost glowed. It wasn't about aesthetics, it was about dignity. The tenants I welcomed were people like the one I used to be, young students, working families, a retired librarian who always brought her own chair to read in the courtyard, people who paid their rent on time. People who said thank you. People who didn't take more than what they needed or expect more than what was fair. It became something I was proud of, not because it was profitable, though it was, but because it was mine, built cleanly and deliberately from the rubble of everything I'd been denied. A space where respect wasn't conditional. A place where no one's future was sacrificed for someone else's mistakes. People eventually started asking questions. Why didn't you let your parents stay? Couldn't you have just worked something out with them? Don't you think family deserves a second chance? They asked because they assumed forgiveness and access were the same thing. That to let go of hurt, you had to invite it back inside. But I knew better. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not setting the clock back to before the wound. Forgiveness is acknowledging the scar, honoring what it taught you and choosing, deliberately, soberly, not to let it dictate your future. I forgave them. I did. I let go of the rage, the longing, the heartbreak that used to keep me up at night wondering what I had done to deserve second place. I made peace with the truth. They chose my sister, and in doing so, they didn't just break trust. They taught me how fragile it really is. But peace is not a front door key. Forgiveness does not come with free rent. I built something better, something stable, something earned. And I built it on my own terms, with my name on every document, my signature on every lease, my values stitched into every square inch. So if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you first, if you've ever swallowed your hurt just to keep the peace or learned too late that silence doesn't protect you, know this. You're not broken. You're not being petty. You're not cruel for choosing yourself. Sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like a ledger that finally balances, a roof that doesn't leak, a lock that only you have the key to. Sometimes justice is success, with your name on the mailbox. Rachel.